Thick, greasy drops poured from the skies like they were trying to drown the last scraps of humanity. Beneath the floodlit spires of Upper Solara, where the elites walked time-extended lives in floating towers, the ground-level cities crumbled under neon-lit decay. Here, in the wet skeleton of Old Manhattan, people didn't measure life in years or decades. They measured it in minutes. Time had become currency, real time, the ticking, living kind that once belonged only to nature and clocks. It started with the discovery of chromium, a silvery, radioactive mineral buried under the icy crust of Europa. Its unique quantum resonance allowed it to interface with biological neural structures. When harnessed properly, it could do the unthinkable: slow, pause, or accelerate subjective time within a conscious mind. The first experiments were small: medical trials, soldiers given enhanced perception, pilots trained in hours instead of years. But it didn't stop there. The corporations saw profit and governments saw control. The Global Time Authority, GTA, was formed, a union of governments and megacorps, declaring chromium the most valuable substance in the universe. And soon after, they created the ChronoNet, a global network that tracked, stored, and exchanged temporal credits. Every human life became a ledger. Kael remembered the exact moment everything changed. He was 17. His mother was dying. An incurable neurovirus from Europa's mining colonies. No cure, no treatment, only a delay. 1 month of medically slowed time for her would cost 25 years of someone else's. This sister, Lyra, volunteered. She signed the contract without hesitation. Kael watched as her time was drained through the chrono implant in her neck. Her body aging 2 decades in under 5 minutes. Her hands wrinkled, her hair whitened. By the time it was over, she could barely stand. And their mother still died 3 months later. That was the day Kael swore never to forget the cost of time, and 10 years later, he'd become the most wanted time criminal on Earth. Now, Kael moved like a shadow through the ruins of Midtown. His coat was soaked, the worn fabric clinging to his back like a second skin. In his left hand, he held a chrono scanner, its interface flickering with green-blue static as it tracked a weak pulse signal. He'd intercepted it an hour ago. An unregistered chromium spike radiating just outside the lower rings quarantine zone. Unregistered meant illegal. Illegal meant rare. Rare meant important. He ducked into the wreckage of an old transit hub, now more rubble than building. Ivy crept through the cracked floor tiles. A rusted sign overhead still read, 34th Street Metro ChronoNet Access Terminal. In the years before chromium, this place had been a station. Then a shelter. Now just forgotten. The scanner beeped louder. Stronger. Kael stepped over a collapsed escalator and descended into the lower tunnels, his breath fogging in the cold subterranean air. Flickers of red emergency light danced along the walls, running off a decaying backup grid. The tunnel hummed with a kind of presence, as if the walls themselves remembered what they had once been. As he moved deeper, time began to ripple. Subtle at first, his footsteps echoing out of rhythm. Then more extreme. He raised his hand and saw after images, motion trails that lagged behind. The chrono scanner overloaded with static. Then he found it. At the far end of the tunnel was a vault door, ancient, circular, and partially open. Its center pulsed with a faint glow. In front of it, embedded in the ground, was a chromium node, still active. Kael approached slowly. The air shimmered like heat waves. He kneeled, brushing away dust to reveal the node's core. Unlike the synthetic chromium used in most modern implants, this was pure, untouched, unrefined. His eyes widened. No one's mined this kind of chromium in over a century, he whispered. Then the pulse hit him, a burst of data. Not noise, not code, a message projected directly into his cerebral cortex through the chromium field. The vault exists. The value of time is not what you think. Kael staggered back, breath caught in his throat. The words weren't just spoken, they were felt, resonating with his own memories. Visions swirled through his mind. A planet with 2 suns, a floating city with clocks hanging in the air like constellations. A child watching the stars slow to a halt. He shook his head violently, breaking the trance. Oh, what the hell was that? He reached into his coat, pulling out a pulse drive. If the message had been sent to him, it could be extracted. He linked it to the node and began recording. But just as he initiated the transfer, a low click echoed behind him. A step away from the node, Kael, a voice said, smooth, cold. Kael turned slowly, raising his hands. 3 armored agents in matte black suits stood at the tunnel entrance. TED operatives, Time Enforcement Division. Their suits hissed with internal chromium regulators. Combat grade. Each bore the white spiral insignia of the GTA on their chest. "You're a long way from Upper Solara," Kael said, smirking. "A lose your time map? A chromium theft? Unauthorized node access? Disruption of public chrono fields. You've racked up a lot of violations, Kael." "I don't suppose you'd accept a bribe in borrowed hours?" The lead agent raised his weapon. "You're under arrest. Surrender your implant." Kael's smirk faded. "Sorry, I've got plans." With a flick of his wrist, he triggered the device hidden in his glove. A short-range chrono pulse grenade. Time around him collapsed in a burst of blue light. The agents moved to fire, but their movements slowed to a crawl. Their bullets hung in the air like frozen raindrops. Kael ran. Through the vault, deeper into the tunnel system. The chrono field would only buy him 30 seconds. He sprinted through the corridors, heart pounding as time reasserted itself behind him. The grenade's field collapsed, agents yelling, bullets resuming their paths. But Kael was already gone. He emerged into a maintenance shaft, climbed 2 stories of rusted ladder, and popped out into a dead shopping plaza. Rain greeted him like a slap, washing away the sweat and blood on his face. He tapped his earpiece. You there?" A crackle, then a voice. "And barely. Barely. You disappeared off the grid for a full minute. What the hell happened?" "I found something. Old chromium, untouched. Sent me a message. Coordinates. Ascending now. I need an extraction. You'll have to make it to drop point C. They're jamming the upper bands." Kael swore under his breath. A fine. "But Rin, this isn't just another cache." "Then what is it?" Kael looked out over the city skyline, towering spires piercing storm clouds, every window pulsing with the glow of stolen time. "I think it's the beginning of the end." An hour later, Kael reached the rooftop of a derelict medical center, SPNI. A drone shuttle hovered overhead, its beacon pulsing blue. He climbed aboard, collapsed in the rear seat, and handed the pulse drive to Rin, his closest ally, a former time hacker turned pilot. She plugged it into the console and whistled low. "This is old tech. Pre-GTA, pre-Vault even." "Exactly. Someone wanted me to find it. You sure it wasn't a trap?" He shook his head. "It felt different, like a memory, but not mine." Rin glanced at him. "You think the vault's real?" Kael didn't answer right away. He stared at the pulse drive, remembering the voice in his mind. "The value of time is not what you think. I think we've only been taught one side of the story," he finally said, "and I'm going to find the rest." Rin nodded. "Then we'd better get moving. If Ted on your trail, they won't stop. They never do." As the shuttle rose into the storm, Kael looked out at the fractured city below. Billboards flickered with time rates. "Need an extra hour today?" "Only 12 credits. Freeze frame your next date night. Make every second count." He turned away because he knew now counting seconds wasn't living. Living was about how you spent them. And something was trying to remind humanity of that forgotten truth. From Kael's seat in the back of Rin's stealth shuttle, the upper city looked more illusion than architecture. Massive skyscrapers suspended on anti-grav platforms, spinning in a slow, synchronized orbit above the old Earth's ruins. Each tower had its own artificial atmosphere, its own private sun, its own distorted sense of time. For the elite who lived there, life was endless leisure. Time wasn't just money up here. It was a weaponized privilege. Rin angled the shuttle around a chrono-link tower, then banked hard toward an invisible air corridor. A brace! We're going dark. Kael didn't answer. His thoughts were still tangled with the message that pulsed through the chromium node earlier. It hadn't just spoken to him. It had unfolded inside him like a memory he didn't own. The vault exists. The value of time is not what you think. It hadn't felt like a warning or a command, more like an invitation. "Coordinates locked," Rin said. E-Fault's echo came from a decommissioned zone just east of New Siberia. Reactor Core 9. Kael leaned forward. "That's a level 7 restricted area. Sealed after the Europa Rift incident." Which means no eyes on the ground, no live ChronoNet feeds, and no corporate scavengers. Just Ghost. Perfect. She gave him a sidelong glance. "You ever wonder why no one's tried to breach a place like that before? I'm counting on it." The drop point was silent. What had once been a thriving time distribution hub was now a decaying ruin, carved into the base of a blackened mountain. Reactor Core 9 stood like the carcass of a god, its shell cracked and weeping chromium vapor into the air. The surrounding valley was lifeless. No drones, no wildlife, just the low, ever-present hum of chromium echoing through broken structures. Kael approached the outer gate with caution. Caution. His chrono scanner flickered wildly. This wasn't just residual radiation, it was something else. Time felt wrong here. Out of sync, as if the entire area existed half a second behind the rest of the world. A vault signature is coming from sublevel Theta, Rin said, studying the scanner from her handheld. You're going in solo? If I have to. Whatever's in there. It spoke to me. I need to finish this. Before she could argue, he was already through the breach. The interior of Reactor Core 9 was a twisted cathedral of shattered glass, collapsed walls, and chromium veins glowing faintly along the ceiling. Kael moved quickly, following the pulse embedded in his neural interface. Each step drew him deeper into the silence, deeper into the temporal distortion. Then he wasn't alone. A figure moved ahead of him, fluid, silent, cloaked in a deep crimson hood. No armor, no tech. Just presence. Kael froze. Who are you? The figure turned. She pulled back her hood, revealing striking eyes the color of dusk and a face Kael immediately recognized from old TED archives. Ariya Vance, a former elite agent, one of the youngest to ever lead a chrono assault squad, vanished 5 years ago after exposing a classified operation where a time debt program sentenced children to life servitude. You're supposed to be dead, Kael said. Everyone is. Eventually, replied. They stood in silence. You found the vault signal too? He asked. I've been following it for years, but until now, the door never opened. Kael frowned. What changed? You did. A strange weight settled in his chest. He'd heard stories of Ariya, the agent who'd gone rogue after realizing the system wasn't broken. It was designed that way. She'd leaked dossiers, stolen high-clearance vault data, and nearly started a global rebellion. You me? He asked. Because you still believe time has meaning. Doesn't everyone? No, she said quietly. Others, like Ted, like the core, they see it as property. But there are those who remember what it once was. What was it? She pointed down the corridor. You'll understand when you see. Sublevel Theta was unlike anything Kael had ever seen. It didn't look built. It looked grown. Giant concentric rings of chromium spiraled outward, humming with ancient energy. At the center was a sphere suspended in midair by invisible currents. Inside it, swirling lights moved like a galaxy in miniature. This is the vault, Kael whispered. No, this is its doorway, Ariya said. The vault is within. How do we access it? You already have. The moment you touch the chromium node in Manhattan, it linked to you. Say. Kael stepped closer to the sphere. The hum deepened. Images began to shimmer across its surface. Fleeting visions of people, places, events. Some were familiar, others impossibly alien. A woman giving birth under a purple sun, a burning city suspended mid-explosion, a man aging in reverse. Children playing in zero-gravity fields where time moves slower. Then the sphere pulsed. Kael felt himself pulled forward, not physically, but consciously. His awareness fractured and reassembled. Suddenly, he wasn't in the reactor anymore. He stood in a vast white expanse, infinite, silent. Then came the voice. Welcome, Kael. It wasn't auditory. It echoed inside his bones. You carry the weight of stolen time. You seek truth. Who are you? He asked. He was once human. My name was Orion. I was the first to merge fully with chromium, but I didn't fade. I transformed. And I saw what time truly was, and not a line, not a ledger, a living network. The space around Kael transformed. Stars bloomed, timelines fractured and rewove themselves like threads. He saw alternate realities where time was never monetized. Societies evolved freely. Others where it had been destroyed entirely. Chromium existed in all of them, but its purpose was different in each. A chromium is not a resource. It is a message, a memory of unity. You are never meant to divide time. So why create the ChronoNet? Kael asked. I didn't. The corporations did. They extracted fragments of my consciousness, built their systems on fear of death. But time is not meant to be feared. It is meant to be shared. I have waited for someone who would listen. Someone untainted by the machine? You have a choice, Kael. A flash of light. 2 timelines appeared. In the first, Earth burned. Riots. Rebellion. Ted collapsing. The time economy destroyed overnight. In the second, chromium never existed. The world moved slower. Simpler. Harder. But real. Reset the world. Erase chromium. Or awaken them. Show them what was stolen. What was stolen? Kael stood in silence. Understand this. The true value of time is not how long you live, but how deeply you live. When Kael awoke, he was lying beside the sphere. Ariya hovered over him. You were in there for over 20 minutes, she said. Did it show you? He looked into her eyes. Everything. She waited. He rose, legs unsteady. It's alive. It was once a person, Arian. It became something else, something eternal. It wants to show the world what time was meant to be. Arian nodded. Seen glimpses. But I was never chosen. Kael turned to the sphere. Kael turned to the sphere. Its glow now pulsed in sync with his heartbeat. We have to broadcast it. All of it. To who? Everyone. Every implant. Every time bank. Every TED drone. The truth has to spread. Let them see how time was stolen. Let them remember. That'll collapse the economy overnight, she said. Telepathy overnight. Good, Kael said. Maybe we need to lose time to understand it again. Hours later, Ren hovered the shuttle above the mountain's edge. Kael and Ariya loaded the vault sphere into the containment chamber. The energy inside was unstable now, awakening, Orion had called it. You sure about this? Ren asked. You're not just sending data, you're lighting a match. Kael nodded. The world is burning already. At least this way, they'll see the fire. Ren hesitated. What if they don't want the truth? They don't have to want it. They just have to hear it. Ariya touched the control panel. The broadcast systems began warming. A soft tremor ran through the ship. The vault sphere rose from the containment field, hovering silently as a deep hum filled the shuttle. Kael placed his palm on it. To every human with a clock in their heart, a timer in their blood, this is not the end of time. This is its return. You have forgotten what it means to live. Now, remember, as the vault signal spread across Earth, time itself trembled. Chromium implants sparked to life. Drones halted mid-flight. Time banks froze. People staggered in the streets as visions overtook them, not hallucinations, but memories. The truth passed like a storm, sweeping across oceans and cities. And in that suspended silence, no one moved. Because for the first time in over 100 years, the world was no longer being sold time. It was being given it back. Across every city, every sector, every orbiting satellite tethered to the ChronoNet, the countdowns halted. No time debts collected, no interest accrued. No lives measured by the tick of an implanted ledger. Instead, silence reigned, and in that silence, memory returned. Kael stood in the shuttle's main hold, watching the vault sphere slowly dim. The data burst had passed. The truth had spread. Now they waited. Ariya leaned against the far wall, her arms crossed, eyes closed like someone bracing for impact. You feel that? Kael nodded. The weight lifted? No. Her voice was sharper now. The shift. Ted waking up. Within minutes, the retaliation began. Orbiting satellites blinked offline, then surged back with new firewalls. Time Enforcement Division units mobilized, their AI cores set to emergency lockdown. Across the globe, implants buzzed as chronostability pulses tried to overwrite the vault's message, but it was too late. The truth was out there. Like a virus in the bloodstream, it couldn't be extracted. People were already changing. On the streets of Lower Manhattan, crowds formed. Not in panic, but in something stranger. Reverence. People crying, embracing, sharing stories they hadn't told in years, as if freed from a spell. In New Shanghai, a young engineer named May pulled her own implant out with trembling fingers. She'd seen a vision, her grandmother in a world before time was sold. Laughter in rice fields, a clock that ticked only to mark birthdays, not debt. In Lagos, two brothers reconnected after 20 years, one having been sent into time indenture for a petty crime. He'd aged 40 years in virtual stasis. Now they stood eye to eye again. The world was awakening, but so was Ted. Kael paced the shuttle as emergency broadcasts began pouring in. Unauthorized memory implant detected. ChronoNet stability compromised. A time debt collection systems currently offline. Do not attempt manual override. Data corruption in Central TED mainframe. Suspected cyberterrorism event. Kael turned to Ren, who was rerouting communication systems through private relays. How much time do we have before they triangulate us? An hour, maybe two. Depends on how pissed they are. They're always pissed, Ariya muttered. Kael checked the vault sphere. We need to move. That broadcast wasn't the end. It was just the signal. The world needs more than truth. It needs direction. You want to lead a revolution? Rain asked, raising an eyebrow. You know, Kael said, you want to make sure this isn't buried again. They landed in an abandoned relay station deep in the Arctic no zone, one of the few areas on Earth not under active TED surveillance. It was a skeleton of old technology, pre-chromium infrastructure with rusting towers and long dead transponders. But it was off-grid, invisible. Here, they weren't fugitives. They were just free. Inside, Ariya lit a small heater. We'll have to move again by nightfall. But this'll give us time to plan. Kael spread out a map on the console. We need to find others like us. Anyone who's disconnected, awakened. Organize them. Build a new network. You think they'll follow you? Ariya asked. They won't follow me, they'll follow hope. In the following days, something extraordinary began to happen. Messages flooded in from across the globe, encoded transmissions, handwritten letters scanned and sent through jury-rigged relays, even analog radio broadcasts. Stories of people resisting. A farmer in Chile who turned his land into a sanctuary for those fleeing TED collection teams. A former TED engineer in Canada who began dismantling chromium injectors and creating anti-implants. A teenager in Ghana who hacked a local time bank and zeroed out thousands of people's debt. The world hadn't just heard the truth, it had believed it, and belief, Kael realized, was the most dangerous contagion of all. But TED was far from defeated. On the 5th day after the broadcast, a strike team located and destroyed a rebel cell outside Johannesburg. No survivors. Their crime: teaching people how to grow food without time credits. On the 7th day, a blackout swept through Sector 19, a former megacity near the ruins of London. It was followed by forced chromium recalibration. Every person in the sector lost a year of life overnight. Kael stared at the report, his jaw tight. They're accelerating. They're scared, Ariya said. Even you've lost control. But if they get that control back, they won't. She held up a small device, an old world server shard, humming faintly. This has every file I ever stole from TED. Before I vanished, their protocols, their weaknesses, their original chromium research. Before they knew what it really was, Kael took the shard, his hands trembling slightly. This could end them, or start something new. With the shard in hand, Kael and Rin began rebuilding the vault's transmission. Not just the truth, but the vision. Time could be if it were no longer monetized. A future where people lived without expiration dates, without debt clocks embedded in their skin, where children were born free, not in deficit. They created new interfaces, low-tech, offline, untraceable. They called it the Pulse. And through the Pulse, they began to send out invitations, not orders, not commands, just questions. What would you do with your time if no one could take it from you? Who would you be if you were no longer counting the seconds left in your life? In a dusty schoolhouse in Brazil, a former educator named Lucia saw the message. She printed it on paper and hung it on every wall. Dozens came, then hundreds. She didn't lead them, she just listened. And through her, a community formed. In Alaska, a small fishing town built a bonfire and destroyed every time tracker implant they owned. Elders told stories without checking watches. Children learned to listen, not count. Stillness. Kael watched from the relay station, each report arriving like the beat of a new, rising heart. It wasn't about overthrowing TED anymore. It was about outgrowing them. On the 10th day, TED made their next move. Not a strike, not a recalibration. They sent a message to Kael. A direct neural transmission. The voice was cold, precise. Familiar? Director Voss, Mr. Oren. You've caused quite the disruption, but you don't understand the consequences. Kael responded calmly. You're just upset the lie unraveled by playing with forces beyond your comprehension. Do you know how many systems depend on the time economy? How many millions will collapse without it? You've been collapsing them for decades. You want to free them? Then take responsibility. Come in. Let's talk. A pause. You may find our goals aren't so different. Kael stared at the comms array. What is this? An invitation or a trap? Ariya stepped forward. A both, which makes it interesting. They debated for hours. Ariya wanted to attack. Rin suggested ignoring it. Kael, though, he wasn't sure. People need more than symbols, he said. You need someone willing to walk into the fire? You think this is noble? Ariya asked. No. I think it's necessary. In the end, he decided to go, but not alone. TED Central Citadel, known as the Spire, rose like a dagger into the clouds. Protected by defense fields and quantum firewalls, it was untouchable until now. Using Ariya's stolen access keys and Rin's countercode injectors, they infiltrated its outer systems. Kael, dressed in plain gray, passed through its doors with a single escort, Ariya, cloaked and silent. They were not arrested. Instead, they were escorted to a glass chamber suspended above the city. Director Voss waited there, old, elegant, artificial eyes flickering with synthetic blue. He gestured for them to sit. "You're not what I expected, Mr. Oren, so neither are you," Kael said. Mus folded his hands. "I didn't create the system to enslave people. I built it to save them. Do you know what came before the ChronoNet? War, famine, chaos. The time economy brought order." "At what cost?" Kael asked. "A lifetime sold, children born in debt, artificial aging to maximize labor." "You call it injustice. I call it necessary sacrifice. The world you want, it doesn't exist." Uriah stepped forward. "It does now." She dropped the shard on the table. Voss's eyes narrowed. "You want to destroy us?" "No," Kael said. "We want to replace you." The final choice lay before them. Kael had connected the vault to TED-Core systems. With one command, he could erase the time economy. No more debt, no more implanted clocks. But the collapse would be instant. Billions left in chaos. Or he could rewrite it, change the rules, reset the counters, give everyone equal time. Enough to build again. He turned to Ariya, to Rin. They said nothing. The choice was his. He chose balance. A surge of light. TED systems blinked. The vault's consciousness flowed into the network. Not to destroy, but to heal. The time economy was not erased, but reformed. All debts were cleared. All clocks set to 0. From that moment forward, time could no longer be bought, sold, or stolen. It belonged to the people again. Across Earth, cheers erupted. Fires of rebellion turned into lights of celebration. Children were born without trackers. Elders died without timers. Elders died without timers. And for the first time in 100 years, humanity began to dream again.